welcome to another episode of Simon Says. Today we have David Tiang back with us.
Hi everyone, I'm back again.
And David, not too long ago, we had a 4-person chat, right? And that was just before the DAP CEC elections. And so today we want to talk about that. And Lyra, I think we have been talking about some of the things leading up to the DAP election, right? I think even Prime Minister was talking about, term limit. And one of the things, of course, having an independent attorney general or at least prosecution office. Some of the reforms that have been discussed for a while but seems to be missing. So I think in context of DAP election, it will be quite interesting because I guess, so maybe, David, let me start with this. Talking about the core support from DAP. I mean, we talk about the supporter first before we talk about the CEC. And of course, you talk about a lot of urban people, maybe middle class, non-Bumi, for example. Now, of course, DAP, I don't think they want to be known as non-Bumi, but the reality is that
majority of the vote party member is non-Bumi.
So that's their core support and things like that. So that is one of the reasons, I think when we had that 4-person chat, we talk about why it is important. And PKR, of course, to a lesser degree. So let's talk about the expectation, my father was here leading out to the election. So every few days he will show me, today, he's still reading Xingzhou, The Star and things like that. So you see like Lim Guan Eng face and things like that. But let's talk about the support. And do you think the support, as in the kind of voter that will go to DAP since the last general election, do you think they are still the similar kind of voter?
For me, is the voter vote for DAP. Actually, we have hardcore, we have our grassroots, but maybe among the non-Bumi voters, only 30%. I can say last 3 general election, a lot of fan-sitter vote for DAP. So DAP have to prove themselves to the fan-sitter, to the Chinese, Malay, India, especially the non-Bumis, that they are still their first choice. Because we can, just how I mentioned, the 2 reformation mentioned by DAP, PKR last time, but still seems like people don't care about it anymore. But after the CEC meeting, Anthony Locke mentioned it again, that we need to separate the AG and our prosecutor and the terms limit of Prime Minister. So I think what Anthony Locke said is very kind of pivotal, because it reminds all the grassroots within DAP that actually we are for reformation. We are not forgetting what we promised last time. But we know the situation right now. We have to build the nation together, kind of things. But we still want to push this agenda, because you didn't see this in PKR, you didn't see this in Amana, you didn't see this in UMNO Congress, but you see this in DAP. But whether it can push or not depends on the political will. But I believe that DAP have the political will, or else they have to pay the consequences.
Yeah, and that's one of the very interesting things before the election, of course. One of the major sub-theme, or maybe you can even say it's the main theme, is really, Lim Guan Eng moving on, stepping down, being forced to step down, regardless of what term you want to use as chairman. And that did become a reality. But of course, a lot of people say there's a face-saving kind of appointment as advisor. But of course, that was, in fact, Lim Guan Eng was the one in his speech talk about, we support Prime Minister, we support Anwar Ibrahim to be Prime Minister, but we also have our base. We need to be mindful of DAP support. And I think it is in that context the whole discussion about term limit is being raised. And so I'm glad you mentioned about Anthony Locke after the election, because before election it is all fine to say we need to do that, but after that I think he recognized the danger for his base. If people felt like the promise continue not to be met, then they might be. Of course, general election is still far away, and Sarawak state election regardless of the result, it's not going to have a big impact on DAP nationally. But maybe we move on to Lyra, because Lyra, in this show, we kind of have been, okay, I don't want to use the word critical, but we have been talking about Prime Minister, right? Kind of not fulfilling the promises and a bit disappointing here and there. But then when you talk about Prime Minister, you tend to have to include DAP also, because they are like the single largest party that gives the mandate to Prime Minister. So in your view, is the fate of DAP tied to PMX? I mean, what can they do to differentiate themselves? Because you have 4 cabinet ministers now. Anthony Lord surely looks like a core supporter of PMX. At least from the outside observer. But what do you think about this?
Well, I think the fact that he was the one who brought out, Anthony Lok, he was the one who brought out the the term limit and things like that. I thought it was a peculiar time for him to actually bring out this issue, especially after the CEC election, and he won the support. So I felt like DAP is also trying to, like what David mentioned, as in trying to court the fence-sitter in case anything with Pakatan Harapan goes south. I felt like they are preparing a bit of a backdoor, but for now, it's obviously not convenient to actually say that, hey, we are trying to chart our own pathway separate from the PMX. Yeah. I think maybe there is a bit of that sort of agitation, and depending how the Prime Minister is going to react to, even certain issues like ASEAN, is Malaysia going to be that leading voice to actually connect the ASEAN countries with United States, or are they going to be pivoting more towards China? I guess that has DAP. I'm not sure. DAP will want to be seen as progressive, but yet I felt like they were also a bit unsure of the position towards Trump. So maybe they're a bit still pro-China, so maybe a bit more aligned with PMX in that context. But I felt like depending how the tariff is going to work out, that they will, it will be clearer in days ahead. But for now, I felt like they are still playing it very, very safe.
Yeah, we kind of talk about during dinner time, we want to go into Trump issue and tariff, right? But since you brought it out already, David, maybe let me ask you, because it's more like an observation, because I definitely agree with Lyra that a lot are unknown, and people are, you get a few article critical of Trump, like P. Guna Sagaram and things like that. But generally, people are playing their cards quite closely. And you see Lim Guan Eng, for example, talk about the impact of tariff, even though the headline tries to say that, try to kind of describe him as going against Trump, but it's not really. He's really talking about there's a danger if we don't get ready. But what's your reading, based on your interaction with people in DAP, in governments, and also in the Chinese media? Are people kind of, of course, nobody wants to fully support America or fully support China. It's just a suicidal position. But what's your feeling about how people are going to navigate? Is it, like what Lyra say, we go progressive. That's really the European. But even right now, for example, the EU, for example, they are more progressive in terms of green agenda, in terms of open border. But you can see a bit of hesitation now, because they know it might not end up well for them. But what's your read on Malaysia generally?
Overall for Malaysian, especially Chinese, they see Donald Trump. I can say it from my observation, they don't really know what Trump is doing.
Okay,
they are like, oh, tariff is back, but how bad, don't know. But this is how I think. We just talk about, actually Malaysia have a 100% tariff of cars, import cars, and why Mahathir last time want to do that? To protect Proton and Perodua.
Definitely.
And we can see that until now, Proton and Perodua still doing somehow good. A lot of car are Proton on the road, Proton and Perodua, and Myvi is very, very, very good. And now the Beza is very good, very affordable, and all the industrial line, what do you call it? It's like it fits Malaysian very well. So
Yep.
if you can understand this logic, you can know why Donald Trump want to implement tariff in America. I think it is almost the same. And actually, now USA is suffering from the industry kind of like loophole by China and everybody in the world. So it's very understandable. But I think a way out for Malaysian to think about tariff is we have to be less emotional because first, Trump is there for 4 years. You cannot avoid.
Yeah.
If you want to be very angry, but you don't have solution, it's not how international politics works. So I like what Ong Kian Ming said in a passage is like, how can we offer to Trump?
Yeah, that's very interesting. And you know, I think we're just talking about the article, and I mean, Lan Shi was talking about it. It seems like Ong Kian Ming kind of caught up with the reality very quickly because, you know, we're just saying, I mean, jokingly, it's like that's exactly what White House wants to hear. You know, it's like, what can we offer you? And because Trump is a deal maker, you know, he
both
wants
ways,
to,
it goes both ways.
So it's like, hey, what can we do that you benefit and I also benefit? So it's quite interesting. Of course, not a lot of information to act, but at least the intent is there. But anything interesting from the article and, you know, the subsequent, because he did some podcasts also on this issue, right?
So sorry?
I mean, Ong Kian Ming, you know, he talked about this issue also, and because I think he is also kind of trying to link it very indirectly to the CEC election. It's like, because who you vote, basically, it will affect the policy of the party. I mean, DAP, like it or hate it, they are still the single largest party in the Madani component.
To some extent, DAP have a bigger state in cabinet that every component party need to discuss with them, of course. And I think just now we mentioned Anthony Locke mentioned the terms limit. Actually, it's before the election. Before the election, there's a speech and he mentioned it. Well, everybody is like, wow, actually.
A bit surprised, right?
He's like, wow, we still remember this, actually. And after all, a lot of Chinese voter actually is very concerning about this election because first, 95% of Chinese voter vote for DAP. And second, DAP is now the single largest party in the government. So any changes in DAP leadership or anything will affect the whole government. So we can see now there's some effect of the election. And all in all, if DAP leaders, they know how to do the international business, it's good for the country as well. So just now, link back to what you said, Ong Kian Ming said, I think link back to DAP leaders, if really all the DAP leaders, we can perform well in international politics and perform well in diplomat, actually it can help the country, especially in dealing with Trump. Not only dealing with Trump, dealing with Xi Jinping. These two countries actually affect our country a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Malaysia is always in between. And of course, it's like if Malaysia, I mean, when I look at the tariff issue, of course it is linked with China, but it is really more directly linked with America in terms of that. So they could find a solution with America that doesn't offend China, for example, because it's like, you know, it's like he will, but of course it does impact because if you remove certain tariff from American goods, then American goods can come in more cheaply, then it will affect China goods coming in. You know, so there is that kind of, but I'm sure they can find a way. Balance. But anyway, since you talk about the elections, and I think let's go back there because that's the main focus today, right? And when you say that the voter who voted for DAP, which, you know, we can say is really the one that supported Anwar Ibrahim to be prime minister. Of course, wanting him to be a straight out prime minister from Pakatan, but it was not possible. But they are now keen on the result. Now, of course, leading out to the CEC, of course, I mean, there is some, I think you see the post-elections analysis from some of the more progressive publication, like I talk about Malaysia, Guinea and things like that. You look at their opinion pieces, I kind of feel that they felt a bit disappointed. Disappointed in what sense? Okay, we have to give context here. Disappointed not because Nga or or Anthony Loke are not good leaders. They are the future of DAP. But I think the perception is that they are too aligned with PMX. So, but of course, we know it's a very... So do you get that kind of feeling during the election? Because that will be exactly what Lim Guan Eng's camp will be saying, right? We cannot be too status quo and things like that. But was that kind of... was that position kind of clear during the CEC? Like between these... Like people felt like... another thing, I mean, it's just a very minor thing. I don't know if it's true or not. You see the cabinet minister, they get high vote, but they are not like the top vote. So it's almost like there are some delegate who cast protest vote against cabinet minister. Ultimately, they are very comfortable in top 10. But they are not like top 3, for example. Yo Being, they all are in top, who are not cabinet minister. Because cabinet minister always get penalized. But what's your take on that? I mean, when you were there, right?
If we really look at the election system of the APA, it's very different with the direct elect system. That you have to nego. It requires a lot of nego beforehand. So let's say I am a gang, you are a gang. So we vote for each other. Then what is our offering? What is our chips? Negotiation chip. That's it. Like that. So that's why some of the cabinet minister, they are not getting the top posts. And we can see a lot of top posts is like the people that everybody likes. Yo Being, like...
The more neutral gan.
Like neutral gan. If you have a strong opinion, of course the other gang will not like you. It's like that. So all in all, I think one decision made by Anthony Locke is a good thing for us to observe is the parliamentary leaders, which is the party whip in the party.
You mentioned about that.
Cannot the cabinet minister cannot be the party whip.
Is
anymore.
that officially adopted by DAP already?
They are now officially announced, but this thing's still not written in the constitution of the AP. So it will be debate on next Congress, if I'm not mistaken. But since Anthony Locke announced openly, my boss Nga Koming cannot be parliamentary leaders anymore. So he's okay with it.
So is Nga the current DAP party whip?
Actually, I'm not sure whether the party whip and parliamentary leaders, because we have parliamentary leaders and party whip. And according to DAP, parliamentary leaders is senior than the party whip. So the position Anthony Locke mentioned is a parliamentary leaders. So now there's a vacancy here. So according to Anthony Locke, will be a backbenchers, which is very a healthy way to adjust within the party. Because like Simon, you mentioned a lot of time that cabinet minister cannot oppose themselves, which means they cannot oppose their cabinet decision openly, according to Westminster system. So we need to have a responsible backbenchers to check and balance within the party first and outside the party to our coalition. I think it's a very healthy way. If really jadi, if some backbenchers very vocal, very senior, very have a high profile, to have this position is a very good thing to the nation as well. Which, let's say cabinet have a decision on particular issue, actually backbenchers, they are not happy. They fight in the government. Actually, it's allowed by DAP. What if this jadi?
It should be like that, because the executive and the parliament should be separate. But of course, our system, Westminster system from British, you need to be MP first, then you form government, then you basically play a dual role. You are a lawmaker, and you also become cabinet. But then, that's why in the Westminster system, the law, for example, during the different parliamentary session, right? All the laws are actually proposed by the government. You have your select committee and things like that. So that is one of the, I guess, criticism of Westminster system is very centralized. So if you form government, your cabinet basically have a lot of power. So one of the things, if you allow party whip who are not front bench, who are basically have no executive role, and then they can really just kind of say, look, this is DAP position when it comes to the law, for example. And so there may come a time where the party position may be, I mean, in theory, maybe
Different
different
with
from
the
the cabinet. But of course, Malaysian polity, we are not at that level of maturity yet.
Yeah, that means that you have to discuss before your table every laws. The backbenchers have to discuss with the cabinet minister within the party first, which is very good.
So you see, Westminster system always have this kind of discuss first, so you don't get surprised. But then you see the presidential system always get surprised because the executive and the lawmaker are very separate. I mean, look at Taiwan, you look at Korea, you look at US, you look at France. These are example of presidential system, and you literally have the prime minister and president at each other's throat because they are from different party.
Yeah.
So you want balance, then you get more uncertainty. And of course, the British will say our system is older than you all, and so. But Lyra, do you like the development? I mean, if that happens, it's better, right?
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, I do agree that it does have an impact in terms of how even the voters are gonna view how the direction of the leadership, and it actually gonna like pave a way for, I would say, a bit leaning more towards racial harmony. I mean, than we like to think. I mean, obviously, things are still very much, with the Ramadan incident and things like that, that there is still a lot of uncertainty. But I felt like this is a good progression, and it should be also a position that is also adopted by other parties as well. That it's not just because it's a non-Bumi party, therefore they are doing this all things. But how about other things? Because other parties, because obviously we want a bit more accountability and how they decide their internal policies. Actually, it will reflect in the leadership of the on the national level. So I think that's a healthy progression, and hopefully there are there will be more results that's coming out of this, and then people will be more convinced to actually adopt this.
True.
Yeah, and I think the other thing people need to understand is really historically in Malaysia, Parliament has been pretty much a rubber stamp. And because, we just look at maybe 20 years, 30 years ago, even during Badawi first term, the number of opposition is so little, So I guess our politicians are not used to letting the parliament do its job, because it is so executive driven, it is so prime minister office driven. So I'm fully supportive of that, like all the things that both of you have mentioned, but also it's going to cause more decentralization, hopefully. And of course, with decentralization, you get you pay a price. Things cannot. You don't get someone like Mahathir, who kind of function almost like an emperor kind of thing. So going forward, maybe that's going to be our politics. But let's talk about another thing. Of course, we can't really conclude the CEC discussion without talking about the outgoing chairman, right? So Lim Guan Eng, and of course, so many analyses already, and people talk about his fate and things like that. But let's go on to I have two questions here which I want both of you to kind of consider, right? The first thing, of course, is what is his motivation for continuing to want to be chairman? Because since the last CEC election, he's already not Secretary General, so he's already not the top dog. I think that part he also understood already. But what is the motivation, to continue? So that's the first question. Then second thing is really what kind of role and impact do you both foresee he will have in the next term? So David, maybe we start with you.
I cannot guess his motive, but I can comment from all the things I know. There's the one thing is that last time, if you are chairman, you automatically become the 5 select committee to select who can become a candidate. A lot of power.
Okay.
And now we can say if you are a candidate of DAP, the winning percentage is super high. So you can easily build your own gang. And last time, Lim Guan Eng is a SG, and we know that his father has absolute power in the party. But during that time, a lot of people don't want to be candidate. I've heard some story that people call, hey, you want to be a candidate of DAP or
to be forced to.
For 13 or 14. After that, only get the candidate like that. Now it's everybody want to rush into DAP to become a candidate. So the time changed, but also I think LG he have a heart for nation. I think depends on what he have done. I think we can say he have the heart for nation. He want to fight. He want to still fighting for country. And in this post, he can still have a bigger power, bigger say. Because if you compare with, you are just a penasehat and chairman, the position, a lot of difference. Some people say actually it's not difference because DAP, the most functioning position in DAP is SG, Secretary General, Publicity Secretary, and Organizing Secretary. Because these three is most powerful. So depends on what how you see, but I can say for now, LG still have a role to play. He's still not retired yet.
I mean, he's not that old, right? I mean, comparatively.
Yeah. 60 years old.
Yeah, because in politics, it's very young.
Compared with other parties, like 60 years old, you have to retire already in DAP.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at Hamza the other day. I mean, he's almost 70 already, and he's like wanting to be the opposition leader, you know? So, Lara, what's your take on LG? You know, I saying what's his motivation and, you know, what's the path forward for him?
Well, I guess it's like what David mentioned, it's a bit difficult to actually judge his motive or intention.
Okay, maybe let me put it to you. Do you think it has something to do with his legal problem? I mean, that's the speculation in newspaper, that if he's chairman, maybe he'll be immune from that. I mean, do you think that is part of his consideration from your, you know, just observation? Of course, we're kind of observing from outside, right? But I've seen some analysts saying that the reason he was all out for the chairman is because of his legal case, rightfully or wrongfully.
Well, I mean, that could be a driving factor. But I felt like there is also a part where he is, I guess, I mean, being the advisor, you definitely have more say. A bit. I guess he's a bit like modeling after Lee Kuan Yew, and also like Lee Hsien Loong, as in like being the advisor. Actually, you are affecting the whole leadership of the nation, and in a lot of sense, I think like behind the scene, I mean, we always talk about like shadow cabinet being more powerful than the real cabinet itself. So I felt like it's a bit of that, but maybe there is also a bit of personal interest where at least like I'm safe from all this like legal suit and things like that and whatnot. So, but also I felt like maybe there is also opposition that is, I mean, from, I don't know, maybe higher up, like other coalition. I mean, the whole coalition of Madani.
You mean opposition
government.
from other places?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, there is a bit of, I felt there is a bit of that apprehension that maybe is
now,
by the silence of the prime minister.
Now, since you mentioned this, and I mean, if we go back to before GE, and I mean, let's talk about 6 months before the last GE, and I have very, very credible sources to say that at that time, Anwar Ibrahim and DAP relationship was at all-time low. So it's almost like Pakatan Harapan could be dissolved. It's really that serious. So of course, at that time, I don't know. At that time, what was Anthony Loke already Secretary General? Not yet, right?
Yeah, I think yes already.
Already yes.
2022 March.
Yeah, so
around that time.
Around that time. So how much of that you think has an impact, you know, since we're talking about this? You know, like, because in his speech in CEC, LG kind of make a reference to PMX directly, right? You know, the part about, you know, we support you, but we are not going to be yes men, you know, something like that.
Yeah, I felt like there is a bit of that sort of apprehension that is actually felt from PMX.
But if DAP really wants to protect any of its senior person, I think as a senior partner in the Madani government, it wouldn't have any issue, right?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, if Anthony Loke kind of puts his feet down, I think and says certain things are untouchable by government, I think Madani will have to agree.
But it will set a different kind of precedent, as in precedents where, I mean, if they can do this, surely for any other cases they can do that. For
I mean, this
leadership.
is something, you know, when we talk about Trump, you know, doing so many things, that's one of the sub-theme people are saying that, you know, how do you spend your political capital? because I'm sure DAP could do that, but you won't be able to do that many times.
Yep.
Maybe you can do it 2 or 3 times in the whole time. Absolutely, I'm not going to do that. Otherwise, you won't have our support for government. How many times Anthony Lok can say that to PMX? Maybe 2 or 3 times, and that will be the limit. So it has to be really special for you to use this kind of exception, right?
I feel he's probably building his legacy at the end of the day. I mean that would be what I feel
for LGE,
generally,
right?
Yeah, for Lim Guan Eng, as in that there is a family heritage to be protected. That's what I felt. I mean, obviously there is that pathway that is, I don't know, maybe he liked it or not like it. I mean, maybe with the sisters' involvement and things like that. I felt like there's a bit of family first sort of passion that is in him, or intention that is in him. So maybe that drives him to really want to aim for the chairmanship and things like that. Yeah.
What you were saying?
I want to add, just now you mentioned a very good point. It's how many times can Anthony Lok, if they really doing the the negotiating on any other particular issue. But I'm in the Congress during that time, and Anthony Lok mentioned a very interesting case. It's we cannot, if we want to oppose some policy we don't agree, we cannot come to Prime Minister office. It's Mr. Prime Minister, we do not agree with this. This cannot work. And actually, last time DAP, we don't know. Because we protest until we become government. Suddenly we know we need to sit down and talk and nego and meeting. And Anthony Lok mentioned this is tenang kan. In the Congress, and everybody laugh and PMS laugh. It's very interesting that we have to learn how to nego, how to make things happen within the coalition. And now the perpaduan is 18 parties in the perpaduan. So this is the one point. Another point is, all in all, just now, what do you call LGE? He have a role to play. I remember that. Another thing is, Anthony Lok mentioned that actually for the issue warganagaraan,
the citizenship one.
He said, because a lot of backbenchers and DAP MPs actually do not agree at the first version. So he asked, okay, everyone vote without naming it. Only 4 people agree. That's why he come to Prime Minister's office. He's like, okay, Mr. PMX, this RUU round down, we really cannot support because DAP don't support. It's not myself, but all the 40 MPs, only 4 support. How can it be? So we have to revise. And he mentioned that after mentioned to Anwar is okay. He asked Saifuddin. Saifuddin is is it really cannot resolve? We can runding again. Then runding again. I'm like, wow, actually a lot of.
So that would be the 4 or 5 or 6 times you put down your foot. I mean, it's because to say that is to use political capital, right? I mean, of course he has justification. It's less than 10%, only 10% on my MP support.
How can I support? It's 4 people only. And actually, I think a lot of grassroots also waiting for our the DAP leadership to nego with PMS with more vocal. Because last time, after the general election, there's no parliament, and Anthony Lok mentioned that we support PMX without any, unconditionally. So people is how come you unconditionally support a people? But during that time, I think we understood why he mentioned that. But now it's actually DAP our minister is very hardworking. How we can gain much more than now. So the grassroots is hoping for something more lah. So by now current leadership at LG, I think LG can become the black face. And current leadership can become the white face. It can work.
We're just saying, right, should he even be the whip, for example, because that's what the grassroots demands. But of course, all the points that have been discussed here, the reality of Madani, which is not Pakatan Harapan. And of course, we talk about that quite often here also, but still people are not satisfied, So maybe there is a middle ground. the only thing I'll add to all this thing is fairly or unfairly that DAP has been blamed for lack of reform, but you can't say it's their fault. I mean, what about PKR people? But of course, you say, UMNO, Sabah, and GPS can't really be counted because they used to be part of Perikatan and things. I mean, I guess there are some legitimacy to this kind of argument.
Yeah.
So you have the cabinet who can't openly oppose, but you have the backbench.
Yeah.
It's like carrot and stick, right?
Bad
cop and good cop, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's very common in a UK parliament. Backbenchers revolt. Why Malaysia parliament cannot do something like that?
Yeah, but probably going forwards. But of course, especially for Madani, I think. In the early days, of course, you when you look at Prime Minister, he really go and recruit every single Tom, Dick, and Harry, right? And you're thinking why? And I think now you look at it, I think one of the reasons will be he really wants to be secure for this one term.
Yep.
Because he wants to avoid Sheraton at all costs. I think that will be one.
Yeah.
But of course, with all these, they call it bid 10, right? They'll say, and bid 10, you have to satisfy bid 10, every single interest has to be satisfied. So that's a challenge in Malaysia, I guess. But at the end of the day, probably everyone is still looking at bread and butter issue, livelihood, economy, and things like that. Okay, so I think let's move towards the end of today's record. I mean, it has been interesting, but let's talk about economy for a while. Now, I know we kind of mentioned Trump and tariff for a while. And David, you mentioned something really interesting, which is really... Actually, to anyone who is willing to listen, I always try to help them to understand tariff. It's not easy because if you read mainstream media, it seems like it's worse than poison, right? Tariff. It seems like someone is putting cobra in front of your face, try to kill you or something like that. But it's really from historical fairness and things like that. So I mean, the average person kind of know the word tariff already, but of course they still don't really know how it functions. Now, from what you have seen, of course we have other things that's supposed to come in, like RON 95 and subsidy. Now it's like, I don't know, no news already. Is it still going to happen after Raya?
I believe so.
And I mean, it's like that and tariff all come together.
Oh man.
And the other day, I'm not sure did I read it correctly. That the OPEC is still going to come out to increase production. I'm not sure why. It's like, I mean, if you increase production, price will drop. So what is the reason for that? Because the other impact which people have not said is that Trump is authorizing a lot of drilling and things like that. It's going to he wants US to be very energy independent because remember Trump cycle 1 he did that and that gave him leverage in Middle East. Like he doesn't have to look to Russia face, he doesn't have to look to Iran face, he doesn't have to look at Saudi face because I don't need no petroleum from you. And of course all these things are going to impact Malaysia's account, and we also have seen Petronas kind of laying off people, and people are asking, can we see Petronas account and things like that. But what do you think about all these things? And maybe just one final point for both of you to comment. Our friend in Malaysia, Kini, Guna, P. Guna always criticize Trump, but he said something very interesting. Maybe he get a lot of feedback and people say, Guna, you are crazy and things like that. But he was saying, hey, why don't we do a DOGE style thing in Malaysia and close down unnecessary GLC? Then of course a lot of comment come back and say, Guna, you are more stupid than you think and things like that, because he say GLC is basically political funding, and probably it's true. But what do you think about all these things? Like people are starting to we really hate Trump and things like that, to something like, hey, maybe something we can learn from him. So do you see that kind of shift maybe in Malaysia? I mean, we see that a little bit, but and if that is going to be useful, I mean, we recognize the political system are very, very different. If anything, we are closer to UK style and things like that. We don't have independent executive and legislature. But what do you both say? And I think we can kind of conclude today's recording.
Oh, I think for the Doge idea is very, I like it very much because
It's very radical, right? I mean, it's like look at US, they are like really manifesting.
yeah.
People are really against it.
Of course, a lot of mainstream media people or people out there is like accusing there's a bunch of university students doing the AI and how can they access to the tops, everything. But it's true one. If not true, Trump won't sign an executive order. That's the first point. And other point, second point is a lot of people say, oh, everything bad, tariff is bad, but anything. But I think we cannot lose hope for this nation, even to this international politics thingy. Why? Because just compare 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it's unthinkable. What will be happen now is unthinkable. Can you predict Israel and Hamas have a war? You cannot. Ukraine and Russia maybe geopolitics, but Trump you cannot predict. So I just think that all the people you don't, how to say, you don't, how is the right word? It's like you don't think your emotion is the right thing. So just to control your emotion a bit and just think about what is the logical way, what is the right thing to learn, what is the bad thing to avoid. Then only that you can perform, whether you are a country, your company, you yourself, like that.
That's a really good point because we sort of have one practice already with COVID, right? And so many unthinkable things happen. Yes, of course, a lot of mistakes were made, but human shown like strong resilience to change. You know, it's like why you know we should be more hopeful. You know, it's like it's not the end of the world and things like that. But of course, that's the tone right now, and I think that's a good positive message out there. But Lara, what's your take on all this?
Well, I feel like there is. I mean, we have been talking about like overturn window for a while now. I guess there is that. There comes a time when Malaysia will begin to recognize that there is that overturn window for actually deregulation. I felt like one of the biggest issue that is causing Malaysians not being able to thrive in the economy is actually because there's a lot of regulations and it actually a lot of red tapes within the bureaucrats and really I think this is something that I mean why would they be longing for the ex-prime minister Najib? It's because I mean that there is a way to prosper in a business. I mean minusing the corruption and things like that, but I guess at the end of the day, if you really think about it, there is that transformation that he promised, and I mean he did demonstrate some sort of transformation, and I think one of the biggest thing was the introduction of the UTC.
UTC.
Yeah, I mean it actually helps like a lot of processes to be actually shortcut, as in like passport renewal and things like that. So I think these are things that people do appreciate. So I feel there might come a time where Malaysians are a bit more acceptable towards deregulation, and maybe that's when like things like DOG can be introduced in Malaysia, and you could really begin to see that hey, there is like when you start to decentralize, I mean in the right direction, not to pave way for more warlords, and you could actually see when because people thrive when there is lesser regulations and lesser of the government overreach. So I think that I think it's a good thing that if Malaysians would learn from what is happening in the United States, because what Trump is doing is essentially just showing you, hey, there is a better way of doing all this thing, and at the end of the day, I'm protecting the American interest. So we may look a bit more secluded, isolated, but I mean people can say all that they want, but the thing is, at the end of the day, is your economy thriving? Is your are your people happy? Are they really like able to enjoy like peaceful life in Malaysia? So I think that's the thing that at the end of the day, I think why we're going into grassroots is because all this thing, I mean these are the things at the core of their mind. These are the things that they are thinking of. So I mean if we could like resolve all these issues, and even I mean I think maybe once we begin to see, hey, there's a lot of wastages, and people might even be a bit more acceptable to really like cutting off GLCs. Yeah,
it's very interesting because one of the other thing about DOGE and and this is the overall plan of Trump's administration, is if we can cut enough waste, then we can actually eliminate income tax for those earning 150,000 per year. So that's a huge thing, and a lot of people say you are crazy, but really at the end of the day, I mean, I just when you're talking about deregulations and overturn window, of course, two things I immediately thought of. First is, are we ever going to see an overturn window for against affirmative action, for example? You know, the day will come, I really believe. Of course, now you go out there, people will say you are crazy and things like that, but the day will come where people will not tolerate. But the other thing, of course, talking about deregulation is, I just look at the moment, you look at inland revenue, you look at a lot of compliance department in Malaysia are just very ultra aggressive in their enforcement and things like that, which is really going against, you know, the grain of what you were saying. But you know why inland revenue needs to go and get money? Because treasury is empty. Why treasury is empty? Because government use too much money. So why use too much money? Because it's a lot of waste. So it's like if we have a DOGE kind of thing, but of course, you know, somebody say so rightfully, it's like very, very few people in the world have the political will to do that, because that's the gravy train, right? If you do that, you lose the support. Can you imagine if you are branch manager, I mean, you're division chief of a big political party, you promise all kind of I mean, we will grow up, people want to be politician because they want the gravy, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, we can hope, right, one day it can be like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's all a different topic, another discussion for another day.
Yeah.
So David has been interesting, and I know we want to talk about DAP. We sort of did, right? But deviate out there, but always interesting for you to join our show.
Yep.
So I think that's all we have for today. So until next time, so enjoy your trip, and we do recording again soon, hopefully.
Sure.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.